Hi everyone, it's Monday Mashup. I'm going to show you a program today called Padlet and how I use Padlet, which is a virtual bulletin board, to have my students show their understanding of vocabulary terms through poetry. Let's get started. So Padlet is that virtual bulletin board. If you're not familiar with Padlet, I have a video and you can message me for information on getting set up. It's really easy and very intuitive. I wanted students to show that they understood our vocabulary terms through the use of poetry. When I decided to set my Padlet up, I chose columns because I felt that this would be the best setup to add my vocabulary terms. I'm able to include a title so I can keep track of which week of vocabulary or whatever the lesson is. I started by adding a column called Writing a Haiku. And I was able to add this column by simply clicking on the Add Column rectangle. I wanted to include information on the haiku just in case students needed a quick review, because I had already taught a mini lesson. You don't have to teach a mini lesson ahead of time. Students can have a discovery lesson, and I'll show you how that happens. To add a sticky note underneath the column, you'll click the plus sign on the rectangle directly below. You can see mine is complete here, but I'll take you through how to fill out the sticky note. You will be able to see the student or the author's name here. There is the trash can to delete, a place for title, a place for text, and then underneath you have 4 action buttons. I'll show you what those mean. So I decided I wanted students to have a reference to go back to on haiku. So I typed in lesson on haiku, and then the action button I chose was the hyperlink. I clicked the hyperlink and it allowed me to add in a link to a page that explained what a haiku was and how to write one. And that's what you're seeing here. When you click on this link, you can see that students go to the How to Write a Haiku lesson. So you can always set up the first column with some kind of introductory or reference information. Again, clicking on the plus sign to add a post or a sticky note. I then went to the next column and added my vocabulary terms. Now, I wouldn't add all 20 vocabulary terms here because that becomes unmanageable. No one wants to read 20 haiku per student. So I chose the 10 most important vocabulary terms, and then I allowed students to choose between 6 and 8 or 5 and 8, depending on your group of students. Under each vocabulary term column, students are able to add their own post or sticky note by clicking on that plus sign. Again, you can see the author's name or the student name. There's a place for the title, their text, and then those 4 action buttons. The action buttons are Upload, Link, Google Search, and Snap a photo with your webcam. The 3 dots give students a lot of other options, including voice recording, which can be used in a really fun and creative way. And I've got some ideas for that I'll share later. But I typically have my students stick to these 4 action buttons, in particular the Google search, or the link, or the snap a photo. Now we're ready to write our poem. I want to know that students understand the term unanimous. So here's an example. At the shelter, we all voted yes. No one was against the choice. The black dog is ours. I emphasized to students in my example that I'm using proper capitalization for titles. It's a good way to get in capitalization skills. I can also see that this student understood the haiku form, 3 lines, 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables, and it's a great way for other students to check their work and to look at other students' work. I'll show you how I added the cute image of the dog. This just adds a fun creative element. I simply went to the Google search and I typed in my keywords. This is also a great place to teach students the importance of using specific words and terms. Click my search, and there's the picture of the dog. Again, it's just a way for students to be creative and to add something different. This shows you the student understands the term unanimous. They're able to express that without using the word, and that's one of the requirements that I have for my students, is that they're not allowed to use the term. This again is a very high level thinking activity, but it's one that students enjoy and they can do easily once they get the hang of it. Once the students included a poem under the category for that vocabulary term, they can go ahead and choose the other terms that they wanted in the columns that you'll add. So the next column I added was precede. If I were a student and I chose this term to write a poem with, I would click my plus sign and begin the process again. When you're setting up your Padlet, you'll want to click to add a column. This is where you'll type your vocabulary term and click Save. You can see that as you begin to add the different columns, it will cause those columns to go off screen, so you'll have to prompt students to scroll to the left to be able to see all the terms. I want to go back to setting up this category of information and just give you a little more insight. When you're entering a post sticky note or a post-it note, this upload feature becomes really handy if you have something on your computer that you wanted to upload. Let's say you had a document or a handout on writing a haiku. You didn't want to share a link. You could simply click this upload button and it would allow you to pick a file from your computer. So this is how I use Padlet to have students work with vocabulary and poetry. It's a fun and creative way to get them to express themselves, to show their learning of the vocabulary terms. Another thing that I would do with this activity would be to have students come in and look at the other students' entries. And when they do that, you can see that they're getting multiple exposures to what a haiku is and to examples of the vocabulary word. So we know that students are understanding the terms, they're able to express themselves creatively and in a higher level way. If you have questions about using Padlet, about how I incorporated vocabulary into poetry, hit that comment button and let's start a conversation. I'll see you next time. Until then, have a great week.